Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Shared Discovery, the show and podcast dedicated to sharing the many exciting and enjoyable aspects of games and gaming. I'm your host, Victor. Today I'm joined by our new co-host, Chandler. Chandler, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good today, Vic. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to finally get you in here. We've been trying to get you in here for months.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be part of the BCTV program here. Super excited to be part of Shared Discovery.
You brought us some really cool topics, but I think before we get into that, we need to let them know who you are.
All right, well, you already kind of kicked it off. I am Chandler.
So let me guide you with. Let me give you the questions. These are the questions that I ask all our new co-hosts,
Sure.
right? Because this is about games, right? I don't want you to tell us about your business. I want to tell you about games, right? So how long you been playing games? What are your favorite games?
Sure, no, 100%. So, man, the first part of that, how long have I been playing games? That very long time here, folks. As far back as I could go when you asked me this question, I mean, I have memories of playing Candyland, things like that, but I don't really consider that when I first started playing games. Really, I've got a lot of great memories with the family. Definitely when I was out and about camping, I'm sure a lot of you out there kind of feel the same thing. Then on those rainy days, we just sit in, we'd play some chess, backgammon, things in that nature, card games. We just kind of make them up on the fly too. Absolutely. And just so we're talking at least 2 decades.
I've been there for a big part of it too.
Yep.
I remember us playing Pokemon Master Trainer.
Yes.
We're going to be talking a lot about Pokemon today.
Yes, we are going to be talking about Pokemon.
And again, bring me right back to us, making our own rules for games. We've been doing that for a long time.
100%.
We've been playing games. Oh man, I think I met you first when you were 6. I was 9.
Probably around there. If you were keeping tabs on it, yeah.
That was the main thing we did was play games.
100%. That's all there was to do, and it was a wonderful time. But if you were to kind of dive down a little bit deeper into what are my current favorite games, I've actually joined one of our local community chess clubs.
Really?
So I am ranked in the high 3200s. That's a lie. I have not ranked myself yet. I'm not a very good player, but what I really like about chess is that it's almost the most balanced game I can probably think about, where it's just wit against wit after you understand what the game's all about, and I really appreciate
No randomness. There's only randomness in the coin flip.
Correct. You got it. Yep. Who's white, who's black. Yep.
Skill, through and through. So is that what you like about games? What is it that's kept you playing games for this long?
Oh boy, I see games as an art form. And so pretty much anytime I'm plugging in a cartridge, and actually, personal thing about me, the newest console I own is a Nintendo GameCube. I just refuse to...
That's a lie. He owns a Nintendo Switch.
Okay, that my wife owns that.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
no, that's not mine. She made that very clear.
We own everything together.
Oh, gotcha, yeah. Yes. But no, I just love something about, plugging in a cartridge and just seeing what individuals could do with a very limited pool of resources. Because nowadays, I mean, when it comes to graphics, sound, things in that nature, it's just incredible. It's actually stepping into real life where I really enjoy these limitations and how someone could tell a story within those limitations.
Yes, absolutely. And that actually segues really nicely into what we're talking about today.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
You brought me this topic. I never thought about it, but when I started diving in, I was like, wow, this is a huge, very interesting topic.
It goes deep.
It goes deep. So today we're going to be talking about the history of patches and updates in games.
Yep.
Right? How did game designers and developers update their games in the past, and how do they do it now?
100%.
So that being said, I want to jump in and ask you a question out of the gate. This is what we like to do to lead into the
Let's
question.
dive, Victor.
Dive right in.
Yep.
So, what game patch has improved a game for you?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, Victor. So actually, I would like to start out with any localization.
Oh, hold on. We actually have a patch for this question.
Oh,
Yes.
of course.
Yeah, sorry about that. I want it to be a more balanced question for you.
Yes,
Day one patches,
Yep,
right?
continue.
Okay, so question 1.1.
Yes.
What game patch has improved or worsened your experience?
Okay, I love the question. I love the little update there. Yes, definitely made the question a little bit better for me. I'd like to actually talk about now League of Legends and kind of what Legion of Legends have done over the past with some of their updates. What's going on there, Vic?
So, okay, we actually have another patch for you. I'm so sorry. I know these day one patches are rolling in, but it's, again, to make a good experience for you.
Of course, Victor.
So,
all right.
Patch 1.2. What game patch or update has improved or worsened your experience?
Improved or worsened the update. Okay, yes, update.
Yep.
Okay.
We added that word update to make sure you know what we're talking
They're
about.
kind of, interchangeable.
You're a blueberry man, right? Didn't want to get that confused.
Blueberry patch.
Yes.
I like that. Well, no, with that question, that actually makes me go right over to Donkey Kong Country 3. So it's one of my favorite pastimes, made in 1996. And actually, with both the... Is there something else going on here, Vic?
Okay, they assure me that this is the final update.
Who
for
is
the
they?
day. Listen, I didn't make the game, okay? I'm referring.
All right, Vic.
Laying the information.
All right.
Okay. Version 2.0.
2.0.
Final question. Okay. This is going to encompass patches, updates for you. What was a really memorable game update or patch for you?
Okay, so most memorable.
Memorable.
Okay, and actually we're going to be talking a little bit about this at the bottom of the hour, but I'd really like to talk about League of Legends here. And so even though patches can kind of have upsides and downsides, a very memorable but kind of downside for me with League of Legends was one of my very favorite characters, Urgot, for those of us, the OG Urgot fans out there, for our League of Legends players, got a complete rework. And that was an update to the game that I was not expecting. Actually, I wasn't playing the game for a little while, came back in and realized that one of the things I absolutely loved about it was now gone.
Yeah.
Just with a patch and an update.
Patch and an update. League is notorious for those reworks.
Yep.
Right. You take a lot of time off. You're gonna lose some stuff. There's gonna be new things. You're gonna have to learn. You're gonna have to study.
100%.
Right. So that stuck out to you for not a very good reason.
Correct, but it's ingrained.
It's ingrained.
Yep.
One of the patches that stuck out to me that's memorable was for a good reason. Right. I played World of Warcraft a lot.
Oh yes, I remember.
Listeners know this,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And sometime around the Wrath of the Lich King Cataclysm expansion, they added different forms and different colors to the Druid shapeshifting.
Right.
So for the longest time, the Druid forms, your color would be based on the skin color of your character or the race that you were. And there wasn't much deviation to that.
Right.
But they added the system, I think it was called glyphs, and later on they let you pick just from the get-go what color you would be, what type you would be. You could augment your horns and stuff.
Sure.
So it's like, whoa, this was a universally loved patch, right, for the customization.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think our two answers here, memorable, really highlights what we're going to be talking about today. The pros, the cons that come with patches, and our little bit with this intro question highlights potential con with
You've got it.
Patches. But I think it's time to dive in.
Let's dive. Diving deeper now this time, right?
We're diving deeper.
No more patches on the questions?
No more patches on the question. I can't promise anything at the bottom of the hour.
Okay.
But as we go through, this is final.
We will see.
It's a cartridge.
It's a cartridge.
So we have a disclaimer. We have a disclaimer in all of our episodes.
Okay.
Right. So this is not an exhaustive list of all the ways that game developers update their games and have done it historically.
Makes sense.
But it's an overview.
Yeah, of course.
Right? We want to highlight the numerous ways that they have, but we're going to miss examples.
Yes.
And that's okay. And if we do miss examples, let us know in the comments. Email us at shareddiscoveryshow@gmail.com. We want to know, and we'd love to touch on that in another episode.
All right.
Another thing I want to say is that we are going to use the word patch and update interchangeably throughout the episode.
Yep.
So
we're all going to be good with that.
Yeah, right. So don't tear us apart if we keep switching them.
And if you have things, just put it in the comment section, as Vic said, and yeah, we'll read some of them.
We'll read them.
Yeah. Oh, we'll read them. Yeah, all of them.
We'll read them.
I'm going to start off with a definition as we
got to define it, right?
as we plunge in here. So, verbatim, we've got what is a patch, Vic? So, a patch in computer games is a set of updates or modifications that are made to the game to fix bugs, improve the performance, or add new features, right? Kind of back to that World of Warcraft, kind of the glyph, right? These updates can be applied to the game through a variety of methods, such as through online services, by downloading a file to the internet, or by using a direct disk or USB drive. Patches are often released as a way for the game developers to improve the game for players and to address any issues that have been found in the game.
And I really like this definition. While it is ostensibly for computer games only,
yes,
if you drop the computer out of this definition, the core of what a patch is fixing a game.
Correct.
Right? And as we'll see as we get into these additional methods, that is what a patch or an update was intended to do, even before they had the hardware to do it on consoles and cartridges. So I really like this definition. So think about this as we talk about a patch or an update: fixing bugs, improving performance, and adding features. These are the three key aspects that we're going to focus on.
I couldn't agree more.
Today. And so as we dive in, again, history. So we're going to start with the methods to update games without the internet.
Without the internet?
Without the internet.
Oh my, was that a time?
So I do have to shout out a YouTuber that actually helped a lot with this research. Oh, cool. Their channel's name is Kiro Talks YouTube channel. And had a couple videos actually titled Updates Before the Internet. So directly helped with a lot of this research.
Oh, I love that.
I wanted to shout that out.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Kick us off with the very first method that was used for games.
For those of you playing at home, now's the time to make your guess. They didn't.
They didn't.
They did not. Not at all. Whether it was finished or not, the game just came out as it was.
Yes.
The bug was the bug. The glitch was the glitch. The language that it came out in was the language it came out in.
Yes.
Yep.
And there were many games that released.
Yep.
That's how they released.
100%.
Never thought about again. We'll fix the game in game 2.
Sure, if it got that far.
If it got that far,
Yep.
but oftentimes they were never touched again because they weren't successful. They didn't get the money.
We're talking to you, Cheetahman, back in the original Nintendo, notoriously known for being glitchy and not a good game.
Okay.
Yes.
What is that game?
Cheetahman, would you believe me if I said I never played all the way through because it was so frustrating?
It was so frustrating.
So frustrating. Actually, it's one of the rare games up there on the charts. I know we're not here to talk about, that kind of stuff, but it was just a completely broken game on the original Nintendo, and actually I believe it was an unlicensed game, which
Really?
probably would tell you a thing or two about it. But yeah, no, it's just a prime example of just a game that was released. Hey, we're just going to make the money we make off of it, and if people like it, maybe we'll make another one.
Maybe we'll get another one.
Yep. But another example too would be kind of any of your Japanese releases for, let's say, the original Super Nintendo.
Sure.
Right. I know Clock Tower is one of those, and Clock Tower just had a Japanese release, and so it never got an English localization.
Yes.
So it just came out as a beautiful game, but it only came out the one time.
Yeah, that's a classic case of not getting updated because it was successful, but not enough to reach the whole world.
Correct. 100%.
And that actually leads us into our next method of updating games, which is regional or international releases.
Okay.
Right? So a game gets successful enough, they would often release it in one region or country first, Japan
Yes.
specifically, and then months or years later, they would release it across the world. And this was called localization. And video game localization, for those of you who don't know, is the process when all assets of a game are translated and all voiceover is recorded in the target language.
Correct.
Right? And so what happens with this localization process is if there's enough time between them, it gives them time to fix issues that they found in the game. So the first version of the game in Japan often becomes playtests.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And a good example of this is the original Super Mario Bros.
Of course. 100%.
And this released in Japan on September 13th, 1985, and then it released in America on October 18th, 1985. But
It's not a lot of time.
I know you're saying, you just said it, they're probably saying it too, that's not a lot of time. How did they update it? Well, it wasn't because of the American release that they were able to update it, it's because of the European release.
Oh.
The European release didn't come out until May 15th, 1987.
Okay.
So that gave them a year and a half of the Americans and the Japanese
Sure.
fan base playing the game, play testing, and finding the glitches.
Right.
And one glitch that I really found interesting was in every single water level, there's the tube to get out, right?
Yes.
And above it, there's an empty block there. And in the original American and Japanese versions, there's a way as Big Mario to glitch into that block and then get caught in the blocks, and you are stuck in the level until the time runs out.
Yep. No, I totally know what you're talking about. And this is kind of like a little homage to maybe episode 12, right? The speed running.
The speed running. Yep.
Huge speed running thing.
Yes.
These localizations is definitely where a lot of the speed running even competitions come from, right? English versus the Japanese versions versus the PAL versions.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. All have their major differences.
And we can touch on this here, but I think this is actually a really great time to touch on this because the localizations, people will have their favorite localization of a game because the text moves faster. There's a glitch that allows you to beat the game 20 minutes faster.
Yep.
Right? So people will pick those localizations, and some fans in the speedrunning community will get frustrated when a glitch gets fixed, an exploit gets fixed.
Sure.
Because then they can't go as fast.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's a potential downside of the localization. But again, think about that intention of a patch.
Correct.
Intention is to fix the experience for majority of the fan base.
Right. Not the minority.
Not the minority here.
Yep.
And so that gave time, this European version, a year and a half later, gave them time to just put a block there.
Yep.
That's all they needed. That's all they needed to do to fix it.
Yep.
And this wouldn't be complete. This localization conversation wouldn't be complete without a discussion about Pokemon. And everyone around here knows we talk about Pokemon at least once every episode.
Okay, well, check the box.
Check the box. So, historically, Pokemon is released first in Japan.
Yes.
Much earlier than the rest of the world.
Yep.
So this gave time for a lot of that playtesting. So because of that, when they would release new games, they were able to change the sounds and update the graphics, the names, glitches.
All the sprites, I think, too, for
Sprites,
the Pokemon.
yep.
Yeah.
So for the first red and green release, the sprites kind of looked like duty butt. They looked really bad. So when blue came out, they actually revamped them. I actually recommend go looking up the difference between those sprites. They're wildly different.
They're crazy different.
They're crazy different.
Yep.
So that's a huge benefit of these localizations. Gives them time to update them in a lot of ways. But we'll move on here to the next method.
Correct. Number 3 here. We got
Number
updated
3.
releases. So sometimes they wouldn't wait for an international release, right? And it would simply release as an updated version of the game to, stop the game-breaking bugs and things of that nature. And I think Ocarina of Time, those of us
This is
who
a
are
good example of
Legend of Zelda fans out there,
Yes.
how many different patches,
Where-
versions?
so for those of you that are watching and those that aren't, we actually have a copy of Ocarina of Time here with me on the studio. Thank you for bringing that in.
No problem. That's what I do.
Not as many copies as you're about to tell me.
Right. Oh, yeah. 6 versions. So what? We had version 1.0, 1.1, 1.2,
Yep.
PAL 1.0. Did PAL 1 have a? Yep. PAL had a 1.1. And then for those of us that were GameCube lovers, and I can't remember exactly how it came out on the GameCube, but for the Master Quest version, there was another Ocarina of Time release, and that
Yes.
was some special pre-order, or
Yeah, it was actually a pre-order release. They were trying, we'll get into this later when we get into additional hardware, but they were trying to update the cartridges, but then they just realized it's easier to send the game as a pre-release, a pre-order bonus for Wind Waker.
Wind Waker. Yep. No, beautiful game. Beautiful game.
But 6 releases.
I know.
6 versions,
Yep.
and every single version fixed glitches, music, changed censoring.
Yep.
Every single one.
And they all had different motherboards, right? Like every single one on the inside was a different version of the printing and the coding. I mean, it's
so
insane.
it's so weird too. And what's really weird about this one specifically is all of these updates were actually done before the 1.0 release. And the reason for that is there's speculation, but probably money. They had all the cartridges
Probably
made,
money.
and as they were testing them,
Sure.
they found out that okay, these bugs are in here.
Right.
We can't just throw away millions of games.
Correct.
Send it out. We'll fix it in a new version.
Right.
It's weird. All right, I think we're done with the sheet.
Is this how we do this?
Ready? Send it. You beat me. You got me. It went further. And so what was really interesting in the video I watched is that some could say that since these updates and patches, as we call, for Ocarina of Time came out before the game release, some consider this the world's first day 1 patch.
Oh my gosh. Wow. All the way back. Yeah. What was that? 1996. Anyway.
Did we put that? Oh, I just threw the sheet.
I think
96, I believe, yeah.
In the comment section, let me know if I got that right. I had 6 versions to at least get that
You
right
do have
with,
6
so I got
versions,
some
yes,
leeway
sure.
there. But anyway, no, it's absolutely insane. And what else do we got for?
So this next category is very similar to that,
No.
but it was additional. So this is the updated re-release or the remixes. So these they would again release a different version of the game, but in the version of the game, they're not just fixing bugs; they're increasing the scope of the game.
Oh yeah.
They're adding much more content to the game. So they'd fix the bugs and the glitches that were found in the playtesting, but they'd add all kinds of new content. And again, think about Pokemon. We started touching on this, right? And we talked about blue version updating the sprites, but yellow version came out even after those 3 games were play tested, and it added all kinds of new features.
Right, yeah. It had the where Pikachu would follow behind you, right?
Following Pikachu.
And you can interact with them. He would have different emotions throughout the game, depending
it's the first example of the happiness mechanic in Pokemon.
Yep. Nope. That's pretty cool.
And they added new trainers, all kinds of new trainers throughout the game.
Yep.
And they fixed bugs that came throughout it, but they added, and they made it feel like the anime. So they added Jesse and James to the games.
They did, didn't they? Yes. Yeah. No, that's a nice little throwback. Yep.
And then Pokemon's also really known for this, for the definitive 3rd edition of the game, right? So think about Ruby and Sapphire had Emerald version.
Right.
So Ruby and Sapphire would be played for a couple years, then Emerald would come out, add more content. So Emerald added the Battle Frontier.
Correct.
At the end of the game, end game content, and fixed a bunch of issues. Like Ruby and Sapphire had a berry glitch that we'll talk about later, but it also had like issues with how shinies were
Sure.
encountered. So the Emerald fixed that, but added content along the way as well. But a discussion about remixes
Here it is.
is not complete.
Buckle up.
Please do buckle up. This is wild. And I'm going to read them all, and then we'll talk about it.
Yep.
Street Fighter 2.
Yep. Classic
And this
game.
came up in multiple places across the research because it frustrates a lot of people. Here we go. Ready? You ready to hear all the versions?
All right, I'm ready, Vic. Yep.
Okay, Street Fighter 2, The World Warrior, first released in 1991 on the arcade version.
Yep.
And then after that, it came out in home console. So Street Fighter 2, the Champion Edition, 1992. Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, 1992. Street Fighter's Super Street Fighter Turbo. I'm lost already. Let me start. Let me rewind here. Okay. Super Street Fighter: The New Challengers, 1993. Turbo Street Fighter, 1994. Super Street Fighter Turbo Revival, 2001. Hyper Street Fighter: The Anniversary Edition.
Can't forget the anniversary edition.
Super Street Fighter Turbo HD Remix, 2008. Ultra Street Fighter 2: The Final Challengers, 2017. I can't even get through it.
But you forgot to mention, we have Ultra Street Fighter 2 Turbo Extra Super Final Challengers.
Hey, don't confuse them more. I couldn't even read the list without confusing myself.
It's absolutely insane.
It's insane.
Didn't this kind of tear apart some of
It absolutely.
the following?
That is what I was reading. Is as fighting game fans, it's very competitive. These were probably the best fighting games that existed at the time.
Yep.
Mechanically, so people wanted more.
Yeah.
This was part of it, but they didn't have the technology, so they would release this new game sometime in the same year.
Sure.
Release the new game with new characters, new mechanics. This game would slow down the game. This game would speed up the game. And what was actually really interesting that led to some of the mechanics in later games is they had modders back then. And someone modded the game to crank up the speed like ×4, so it was fast. And people got addicted to that speed.
Oh, really?
They were like, wow, this is fun.
Gotcha.
going
So it had appeal.
fast. And then the developers were like, well, we need to do that. So they
Sure.
sped it up in one of these re-releases. But the issue is that I was reading in these articles, it was frustrating being a fighting fan because you'd buy a cartridge, and then half a year later, it's obsolete, and you have to buy the new game if you want to keep up with the community.
Extremely expensive.
Extremely expensive.
Yep.
And it wasn't until the 2017 release of Ultra Street Fighter 2, The Final Challengers, that a game had all of the characters.
Are you serious?
That's how long you can go
Wow.
on the wiki for this, and you can see a chart of each game and which game has which characters. And it wasn't until the 2017 one that you could get all 20 characters that exist.
Absolutely insane.
It's insane.
So,
So,
yeah. Updated re-releases and remixes.
And
Street Fighter
remixes.
2, the pinnacle example of probably not how not to do it.
and what's interesting is these games would cost about $40 back in the day, each one. That's a lot of money. How much do you think it would cost to buy this collection today?
Not that much, because
Really? Because
I would assume that it would probably drop in value because it's all over the place.
they printed a bunch.
Yeah, they printed a bunch, but also like you have such a segregated fan base
True.
that I feel like I don't know.
That'd be fascinating. We might have to check back in on that.
Definitely,
Post-
100%.
Post it on the Twitter that we definitely have. All right, so we hinted to it. We hinted to this next one, and this is the next category that let them have it. Tell us what it is.
Additional hardware.
Yes.
And remember, we're talking pre-internet here. And so I absolutely loved this section. This was really cool to research on. And it was just a way to elevate your home consoles or anything in that nature and just add on something new to increase your gaming experience.
Absolutely.
And so one of the prime examples that I grew up with as a kid was the Super Game Boy. And I believe we also have one of those in the studio.
We do have that in the studio.
Look at that with Pokemon Yellow version in there.
Let's grab that and show them.
grab that?
Yeah, grab that and show them on the overhead here.
Perfect. 100%. Yeah. So we've got the Super Game Boy over here. And so what was really interesting about this was just a way to take something that was on just a handheld and that was typically always single player, unless you had some kind of interconnectivity, and you're able to play it on your home console at home. And
This doesn't fit.
it does not fit. No,
Game
you
Boy
need the
Advance-
Super Ultra
For
Game Boy
those listening, I
Deluxe.
tried to put the Game Boy Advance cartridge in there. It does not fit.
The GameCube, though, did have
It
a
does. And
Game Boy
we do
player.
have that here in the studio.
Oh,
as
we do
well.
have the.
But
Okay, wow.
Sorry
we
to cut
got
you
them
off.
all.
Keep going.
No, we're good. We're good. And so with the Super Game Boy, what I absolutely found fascinating about it is that when you plugged in your cartridge, it would allow you to swap palettes. It would add these lovely frames. Sometimes it would actually add additional content because I believe it was Space Invaders.
Ooh, yes.
If you would plug in your Game Boy, Space Invaders, into the Super Nintendo,
Yeah.
or the Super Game Boy here, you would get a 16-bit version of the game. So it would completely overhaul the graphics, and you can play an extremely updated version. It was just a way to add additional hardware to your Game Boy console and have a great time.
Yeah, but without having to send it into the developers.
Correct.
Without having to buy a new game.
Yep.
Just buy this attachment, and we're going to give you things. And some of the things that they added that you said already, but they added an override screen on screen for the colors.
Yep.
They displayed graphical borders across the screen, special background sprites.
Yep.
They upgraded graphics, and this was one of the first ways of DLCs in a way.
Yeah, I
Right?
100% agree.
Another one of those. And this came out in 1994, and then the Super Game Boy 2 came out in 1998.
Yep. I think that was Japanese only, though.
Japanese only?
I believe so.
I think you're right about that, yes. And so, staying with Nintendo here,
Yep.
this one actually never caught on, but Nintendo had intentions for the Nintendo 64 to be able to update their cartridges
Yep.
with a add-on, with a floppy disk drive add-on called the 64DD.
Yep.
Came out in 1999. It was a big flop. It only sold 15,000 copies.
Love that.
But the goal was to update games and extend the console's capabilities,
Yeah.
right? And this brings us back to, I was about to say Wind Waker, but this brings us back to Ocarina of Time,
Yep,
right?
yep.
The Master Edition. So
Yep.
the Master Edition, what it did is it made the game harder, and it redid dungeons. And they wanted to, instead of making a new version, they wanted to have players have a way to update it at home.
Right.
But the hardware was not working well. It was a flop. They knew they were going on to the next console.
Yep.
So let's just make it a GameCube game.
Yep.
So this was the intention. Never went anywhere.
Correct.
But the next one that did really go somewhere that I thought was fascinating way to update past games was for the Sega Genesis, and this was Sonic and Knuckles.
Sorry, I'm a big Nintendo fan over here.
But you got to admit, this is cool. I mean,
This actually blew
this
me
is
away, ladies and
really
gentlemen.
sweet
Yep,
how they
100%.
did this. So when Sonic the Hedgehog 3 came out on February 2nd, 1994, it actually wasn't the full game. They split it in half for money reasons.
Money.
So Sonic 3 came out in February of 1994, and then Sonic and Knuckles, the second half of the game, came out on October 18th, 1994. And what was so interesting about Sonic and Knuckles is it was a special cartridge that allowed you to plug in other Sega Genesis cartridges to it. And when you did that, lots of cool things happened. If you plugged in Sonic 3 from earlier that year, and you got the full game.
Correct.
It just combined the games. Okay. Couldn't have made a whole game, right?
Yeah,
The DLC problem. But if you plugged in Sonic 2, you were able to play through Sonic, that game with Knuckles.
That's awesome. Yep.
If you plugged in Sonic 1, they gave you this blue sphere mini game
Yep.
that I didn't look too much into it, but people really loved that mini game. And then if you plug in any other Sega Genesis game, you got an additional level, only one, but an additional level of the Blue Sphere mini game based on the code of the cartridge.
That's super fascinating. I mean, I just love that kind of creativity.
Me too.
I mean, that
It's a really creative way to work with the limitations. Came out of a little bit of greed,
of course.
but it feels like they knew they were like chopping something in half, so let's give them as much as we can while we do that.
And it gives me value for these older versions of things that
Absolutely.
just, I
And it's a
played
good
through
way-
it once. Yeah.
And what you're saying with value, it's really important because it's like, oh, I want to go back and play those games with
Yeah.
Knuckles. I want to go see what levels I get for the Blue Sphere game.
Yeah.
So this was a really creative way within the limitations of the time to update games.
Yep.
Oh man, you brought this one up to me.
Yes.
The Nintendo e-reader.
Yep, 100%. So this was released in Japan back in December of 2001.
Yep.
And so there was a North American release in September, I think the following year. But it had this LED scanner that you would swipe, and it had Game Boy Advance connectivity, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Game
And
Boy-
I know one of the the more shining examples was with Animal Crossing.
Yes.
So for those of us who are Animal Crossing fans at home, right, came out on Nintendo GameCube in the North American release, but actually there was
Animal Crossing right behind.
Oh yeah, look at that! Look at that. Well, there actually, just a little side note, in Japan there was a Nintendo 64 Animal Crossing release.
Was there really?
And the GameCube version is actually a port of that.
That's fantastic.
Yes. So
Do you have that version?
I do not have that
I know
version.
you're a collector.
Yeah, I am a collector, but they're practically spitting images of each other.
Okay.
But anyway, you take this e-reader and you connect it into the GameCube with the Game Boy player, I believe. It would just plug into one of the controller slots.
Yeah.
Swipe the e-reader. And
Was it the controller slot, or was it like you physically put it into the game?
I believe
slot?
I believe it was connected to the Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
You'd swipe, and it would be connected.
I see what you're
I could
saying.
totally be
Yes,
wrong.
the
though.
cord would feed
Yes,
it
the
into
code would
Animal
feed in,
Crossing.
kind of like
I see what
with
you're
your Pokemon Coliseum, things in that nature. But when you would swipe these cards, you would get DLC pretty much. So I believe you'd travel to a new island, or new items would appear and things in that. And just, it was a wonderful, cool way to add additional tech, the LED scanner, into the game and get additional content that would save afterwards. Like once you did your initial scan, it's part of the game now. It's in there.
And do you know if you scanned it on one game, could I give it to my friend to use for another one? It doesn't sound like something you could do, but I don't know.
That sounds like a wonderful question.
That sounds like a wonderful question.
think we should test it, ladies and gentlemen.
Please let us know in the comments.
Yeah, send them our way, actually, because I could probably use a couple of those.
There are a lot of games that they really optimized this e-reader for.
Oh, sure.
Think about Pokemon in general. Ruby and Sapphire, they added new trainers based on that.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, that's actually the name of the game. For the Game Boy Advance, it added new levels and new power-ups.
Sure.
We already talked about the new items and designs for Animal Crossing, and then it added mini games throughout other Game Boy games, and then it had an exclusive version of Mario Party for certain games, and then it added also a Game & Watch game. And they only got to one Game & Watch game before they discontinued it, but they had a whole plan to make a bunch of these Game & Watch swipe cards.
I absolutely love the e-reader. Just that ability to take software and hardware and just add in additional content. I just thought it was genius for the
It
time.
really is fascinating. It's really inventive.
Yeah.
The methods they came up with, these non-computer games.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the last one we have on the list here is called the company distribution events and updates, and these Pokemon fans know these well. And this is where the companies would hold these events to get exclusive content and require you to mail in your cartridges.
Yes. Yep. I remember a couple of these. Oh, at the old GameStop.
Oh yeah. I think I'm done with this sheet. Ready? Nice. And so for Pokemon, you could get legendary Pokemon, or mythicals as they are called now. Essentially, they're legendary in lore, but they're separate from legendaries because they get the mythical category title because you can't get them in the game by normal means.
Sure. Makes sense to me.
So that's how you would get these mythical Pokemon. And then in Ruby and Sapphire, which we have on the table here, these two, there was the very first version of them. Came out with what's called a berry glitch.
Okay.
And essentially, the game would track, from the time that you started it up, it would track days. And once it got to day 366, your internal clock would just break and shut off, and all time-based events would just stop.
Gone.
Poof. So to remedy to this, Game Freak had a number of methods, right? They said you could mail in your cartridge, and it was really interesting. The website that allowed to mail in these cartridges for them to update your games for you lasted until 2016.
Didn't that come out in like 2004?
2003.
2003. Okay,
Yes.
so we're talking
Long time.
13 years.
Yes. So they had that open for a while.
Right, 100%.
But every single game in the Gen 3 era, Emerald, Leaf Green, and Fire Red, for those of you wondering why Sapphire and Leaf Green don't have their stickers on them anymore, and for those podcast listeners, they don't have their stickers anymore because my brother liked to pull the stickers off his game.
Yes, he did.
But the games that came out after them, so Emerald, Leaf Green, Fire Red, Pokemon Coliseum, and XD, which I also have behind me out here on Studio, if you hooked up your Sapphire or Ruby to those games came with an update patch within the game that would send the data over to Ruby and Sapphire and get your clock moving again.
Sure. That's a very software engineer way to approach that problem. It's just genius.
It's really cool because it's like, again, we didn't get true internet connectivity for Nintendo until the Wii, right? The DS era.
Yep, Wii DS. Yep.
So that was a good way for them to do that. They know you're going to buy more cartridges. They know you're going to have friends that have them.
Yep.
So just plug them in, fix them.
Exactly.
And then another example of this was Dragon Warrior Monsters, a competitor or similar monster collecting game to Pokemon.
Yes.
Which you told me about.
It's actually one of my personal favorites. Hopefully you don't have any comments about that down below there. But no, it's a really, really cool game. It takes, the monster fighting genre that kind of Pokemon is based upon, but one of the coolest concepts, I just have to talk about this for a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that the replay value of Dragon Warrior Monsters is far superior, in my opinion, to Pokemon. Because there was a key system. And so you would unlock keys and things of that nature, and it would continue to create new worlds that you could adventure to. Yes, it's a really cool concept. I'd recommend people look up that at home. I thought it was groundbreaking for the time.
Sounds fascinating.
I still play it today.
You gave me a cartridge, and honestly, I don't know what happened to it in the move. I'm disappointed.
It's okay. I mean, the birthday's just around the corner.
Just around the corner.
Yeah, 100%. But no, they did something very similar with just kind of these releases of special monsters. And so you could go into the store, and then they would give you an encounter with one of the mythic, legendary creatures that you could fight against, and you could...
So was there a way to fail that encounter in that?
That's a wonderful question. I hope there's no sad kids out there.
That's interesting, because in Pokemon, they give it to you, but I'm wondering if you had to battle it.
Yeah, no.
That's neither near or far. But anyway, so those are the six methods that we found before the internet, how they updated the game. So we're going to move into the current state of updates and patches.
Yep.
And it's pretty simple.
Tell me about it, Vic.
You connect to the internet.
And there it is. Is that the end of the episode?
You connect to the internet.
Yeah, so it's way simpler.
I even put in here, much simple.
Much simple, great simple.
Pretty simple. Basically, all the consoles, all the computers at this point, you just can connect them to the internet. And even before the mass advent of the internet, like computer games, they still, I think we did forget to mention this, magazines, you'd have to buy gaming magazines, they'd come with update discs, or you'd have to talk to the publisher and they'd send you floppy disks. But now that the internet's there, you just download the files, or here's
your special code, type it in, here it is.
Yeah, and log in. It's just, you just log into the game, and you can't play until it's updated.
Correct.
Very simple. So we're not going to talk about how we got there. I'm sure there's some software stuff in that Wii era,
probably.
But whatever. We're more interested in talking about the pros and cons of what this looks like. And we can't talk about the modern age of updates without talking about early access.
Correct. So what that was considered alpha access, the alpha founding, paid alpha game previews, things in that nature, are other terms that people may have heard before.
And it's a new method that game developers are using, both well and negatively, but it's a funding model for a video game industry by which the customers can purchase and play various pre-release versions of the game.
Okay.
And along with this, you help fund the game as they fix it, and you help play test it.
Yep.
So the pros of that is you are helping to fund the game.
Yep.
You're giving player feedback. The developers are getting feedback. You're growing the community slowly. Yep. And you get a discounted game, because most early access games are a little cheap.
100%.
Right? They're not going to expect you to pay for a full price game before it comes out. And then a lot of people claim that there's a sense of ownership. I help make the game, upon full release, I help make it a better experience.
Sure. No, I could totally agree with that.
But there's some real cons to this.
Yes, there are, right? Oversaturation, I know we were talking about.
I saw statistics that there's over 7,000 early access games on Steam.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Because I feel like in the beginning, just having this early access may have been a really good form of marketing for a company, but when the oversaturation comes, it's not helping them out.
There's a lot of baggage that comes with it.
Yes,
at this point.
100%. We also had that there was no guarantees for the game to be finished.
We'll get to an example of that here, but there's some really egregious examples of putting out the game, coming with a lot of promises and flashy graphics, and then never finishing.
And what's not really too far between is that, like, the game was just never finished, right? And and never left that. What I'm looking for is the early access mode. It just
never left it. Like again, those 7,000 games. I'm sure if we went through them, there's some that have just been in early access for 5+ years.
Yep.
Because they're never going to get finished.
Yeah, and it leads in the last one, right? They get burned because it takes them so long. Like maybe they got into it too early.
Yeah.
So
and there's back to that baggage, right? Because we know of these limitations. You might get these negative reviews. You might be people not even wanting to try your game, or if you were in early access for a long time, they'd be like, "Well, I still don't want to try it," even if it becomes a good experience.
Sure.
People become wary of the early access moniker.
Yep.
So you have to really state your expectations clearly, right?
And follow up.
So a really good example of this is a game that actually released this month, August of 2023. Baldur's Gate 3.
Okay.
So this moved into early access in 2020, 3 years ago.
Okay.
And it's been in early access that whole time. But during early access, they communicated, this is a huge game, we have a lot of plans, and we're working on it.
Yeah.
And they put out updates and patches along the way. They had, on their YouTube channel, they had these posts about what their updates are going.
Sure.
And what they did is they didn't put out the whole game. They put out Act 1. And said, playtest this, playtest this, playtest this, give us feedback.
Yep.
Now that the game's out in full release, it's a much better experience, and it's universally loved right now.
Yeah.
On the Steam charts, it's in the top 10 of most concurrent players of all time.
Really?
Over 800,000 players concurrently, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of players playing at the same time. So that's a really good example of early access being used well. But there's a bad example. Have you heard of Cube World?
Cube World, yeah.
Cube World.
Broken from the start, right?
Cube World.
Yeah.
So Cube World, it promised to be Minecraft World of Warcraft. Right?
Okay, yeah.
It had those graphics similar to Minecraft, but it promised a big, expansive RPG.
Sure.
In the alpha version, it had bugs and it had glitches, but people knew the updates were coming.
Right.
But it didn't end up releasing for 6 years after that. It didn't get any information or communication from the developer for years.
Yep.
And then when it finally did release, it had less content than the alpha version.
Was it still just as broken?
And missed many of the promised content.
Sure. Yep.
So, bad example here is games can just often be abandoned.
Correct.
And that can be, to the credit of the developers, that can be them not expecting a game to get where it was, taking on too much by themselves, life circumstances happening. But again, as gamers, we don't know that baggage comes.
Right. Unless you're communicating. Right? Yep.
And so you got to communicate to that.
Yep.
So that's early access. You can't talk about the update system of modern day without talking about early access.
Of course. Yep.
Okay, so we have a few pros and cons here to the early system.
Well, to the modern, right?
So
we're talking with the internet and all that fun stuff.
With the internet's here. So what's a pro?
I think one of the biggest pros is that they can immediately fix anything that goes wrong. And they have that access to, Baldur's Gate had 800,000 concurrent players.
Yep.
So if there's an issue, they can reach out to 800,000 people in a blink
And
of
they
an eye.
really do. So I've been playing the game just every single day, and just about every day there's a teeny little patch where you log in, it downloads it, and they're like, we fixed this glitch where your character gets stuck.
Sure.
Fix this glitch where you're overpowered. Where you glitch into a box. Whatever it is. Whatever it is. But boom, like that.
Yep.
Within hours.
Yeah. It's no 13, 16-year-long mailing campaign to fix my Pokemon cartridge.
I don't have to connect to another game.
Correct.
Yep.
I don't have to get my floppy disk mailed in. Yeah, it's extremely convenient.
It is
And I think that's
convenient.
what I would just nail it down to.
It's convenient, but that leads us to the con here. I think this is for me, right? And the way they phrase it is, there's an issue in the gaming community where it can be patched later. And it's this mentality for designers and developers, get the game out there. And again, this might actually come from their higher ups, where we got to meet this deadline.
Yes.
You got to get the game out. I don't care how you do it. Get it out.
Yep.
It can be patched later. So that's what you'll hear. And because of that, games come out in sloppy conditions. or broken on release. A recent example of that is the new Jedi Survivors game.
Okay. Yeah.
And when it released, like, it couldn't go over 30 FPS. It was crashing constantly. Many people couldn't connect to the servers. And, you know, they fix it later.
Yep.
And what I was seeing, and this is really disappointing to me as an old gamer, where I'm like, this is the game I got. I'm going to play it, and it's going to be the best experience that I can get.
Yeah.
You know? A lot of people said, I was reading through Reddit posts, and they said, well, I just wait 6 months to a year to play the game so that it can be the best version that they want it to be. It's past the deadlines, it gets the patches, and it's like, that's disappointing.
Sure.
You know, what if you've been waiting for a game for a long time?
Yep.
Right? And back to early access. That was kind of disappointing. I waited the 3 years.
Yep.
But it was worth it, though, because it was good, but maybe it wasn't worth it.
Right.
Maybe it couldn't have been worth it. So,
Sure. So maybe if I can just take this con and dissect it a little bit, it's just comparing now this just against the pre-internet. Is back in the days, you know, with the cartridges behind me and all this stuff, you really just had one shot.
You had one shot.
You had one shot. And nowadays with the internet, it gives these companies some flexibility and some comfort. And now it's just kind of like it is what it is.
It is what it is.
And the culture is just saying
Meet that
it's
deadline,
appropriate.
right?
Yep.
The board's like, meet the deadline, make us that money.
Yep.
Right? And that's what Baldur's Gate is trying to change. Right?
Yep.
Using the early access appropriately to say, when a game officially releases, it can be a complete, full experience.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, not everyone had the luxury of Street Fighter 2, right?
Yeah.
Right? That brings us to the next pro. What do we got here?
Yep. And so, with you mentioned with Baldur's Gate, right? There's every time you log in, there's a consistent update, something along those lines, and it can really shake up a meta and competitive gaming environment. I know, just an homage to kind of the first 10 minutes here, I talked about League of Legends, and I logged in one day, and poof, my character was gone. But clearly, I didn't really want to learn the new character.
Yeah.
But he was extremely powerful. It was a good addition to the game. And I do think now, with the health of League of Legends, it was a smart move.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was disappointed, to say the least.
Exactly.
Telling that to you, Riot.
Ergot.
But no, yeah, I think it's just a really cool aspect, and a lot of people absolutely love this. It keeps the game ever changing. I don't know how long League of Legends has been around for. I
think I played it first in 2008.
Yeah, so we passed a decade.
Yeah.
And it's still alive. It's alive and well.
Absolutely.
And that is a beautiful thing to see a community get around a game that has these kinds of updates, and the internet has been able to just create this longevity for these things we love.
Absolutely. And it's like, there are people that want something fresh for the games they play.
Yeah.
Right? There are gamers like that who are like, I want to come in and have something new every 6 months, every now and then. I want new characters.
Shake it up.
I get that. I would save up money and buy a new character every now and then.
Just not to my character.
Just not to you. I know they did that to Aurelia. Okay, so back to the little con before we move on here. Consistent patches can also be disruptive, mentally and physically exhausting as you try to keep up with the new mechanics. So while it's good to shake up the meta, like you just said, you don't want to learn your new character.
Yep.
There are plenty of people that feel burned out when 3 characters. There was a period where like every single week League was releasing a new character.
Or changing an ability, and it just
changing
shifted
an item. It's
Yep.
like, oh, it's exhausting. That was one of the big reasons I stopped playing, because it's like I would take a break because that's how I play games. Come back 6 months later, and it's like, what is happening?
What is this game?
I don't want to research.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
So you know, new mechanics, new characters, strategies, maps, you got to relearn it all. And so there's no preservation of your favorite version of the game.
Correct. Sorry,
Go
when you
ahead.
speak preservation of games,
Yeah.
I think if we can and if we may, move on to just some examples of good and bad patches.
Yes. I think at the bottom of the hour, it's good to give
perfect
some
time to-
concrete examples.
All right, so as those that have the ability to see our lovely camera here, you might notice this nice little pin that probably is extremely reflective. But those may notice that was the game manual for OSRS, or as what I like to call RuneScape. Yes, ooh, look at that. Thank you. Man, a little Vanna White we got over here. Anyway, my good friend got that for me, and I absolutely love it. It's in my game room.
Yeah.
But RuneScape gets updates all the time, right? And you mentioned I kind of like a relic in time, right? If we could just capture some of these things. And RuneScape actually did that in 2007. That's what we consider old school RuneScape now. But
For those of that don't know, what is RuneScape?
RuneScape is a MMORPG that you can skill, you can do combat, you interact with other players. It's just a lot of fun, but it's kind of in a very, let me say, 16-bit environment, right? So if you love that vibe, I love that vibe. Yeah. Actually, it's a big nostalgia factor. It's been around for
since we just looked this up, since 2001.
Yes. And so it's been around for a long time, and clearly, kind of like League, it's been around for a reason. It's a lovely game. I recommend you check it out. 2 different versions, and so the latter version, which is, I believe, RuneScape 3 at this point, has gone through several patches and updates throughout time here. And let me bring out my patched notes.
Here we go.
On my panted.
You patched my notes?
You patched your notes.
Dang.
So there's just a couple key dates I'd really like to talk about. And so in 2006, there was an event called the Falador Massacre. And so this happened on June 6, 2006. And
666.
Yes, it is. Oh, nice. And so what happened was there was a new ability that was updated and brought into the game called Construction. And so what they brought to this was your character could build their homes, and you could level up from 1 to 99 and just build a home, add additional levels, basement, things of that nature. It was a brand new ability that people absolutely loved. So when somebody first got to 99, which is a major thing in RuneScape, once you get to 99, typically there's parties. It's a very big achievement. And so the individual to get their first 99 had a house party, right? It's construction. They invited them into their house, and there was hundreds of people there. And with that, the owner of the home, the guy that got the 99, was very annoyed by the amount of people, the text spamming, all that kind of stuff. It was just very annoying. And so he decided to kick everybody from his little home there. But what's really interesting is that if you were interacting with certain objects during that time, there was some player versus player mechanics that could occur in the home. And so when everybody got kicked, and those people that were interacting with those items, and they went back to the home world where everybody was at, right? MMORPG, they were still able to fight other players, and players couldn't fight back.
Okay.
And so, as it was deemed Falador Massacre, you're probably putting all the lines together now.
How many characters do you think had that glitch, had that ability to attack?
I would probably say you could count the number on your hand.
Really?
Yes.
So they went to town.
Yes, they did. Yes.
So they got
Yes.
They got the griefers.
Yep, they got the
Okay.
Oh, yes, toxic players.
Yeah.
But it went down kind of in RuneScape history as one of the most infamous glitches. And Jagex, the company that runs RuneScape, had a lot of bad PR on it because they had moderators come in, kick the guys that were kind of doing the killing and all that jazz. But since it took so long for them to fix the code, they couldn't rewind the game back because RuneScape has a really unique time mechanic called ticks. And so they're able to rewind if there's game-breaking glitches and bugs.
Sure.
They've learned that it's a wonderful way to kind of rectify the situation, right? Because time doesn't go on; they just go back in time and reset everybody. It's a beautiful thing.
Okay.
And so there were very expensive items, and for those of us again who've played RuneScape, there were party hats. I think a yellow party hat was the inventoried most expensive item lost that day.
How much do you think that was?
Real world money or in the game?
Yes.
Real world money. So last time I remember looking this up, I mean it was probably at least $400 or $500, right? So because it was in the billions, I believe.
They're taking people's money at this point.
Kind of, yeah, because you had to be in the original game at that time.
Holy
Because this game was going on for years. Some of those people that died that day.
That's a collectible.
It was a collectible. That's a wonderful way to put it. 100%.
Fantastic.
But so that was at least one of the bad glitches, things that needed to be patched, and it was done in real time.
And a lot of these will be subjective, but I think we can agree that's a bad one.
That's a bad one.
Tell us, I like this good one. Tell them the wood cutting one.
The wood cutting one. I don't remember the exact year, but I do remember around social media at the time it was a big to-do.
Yes.
But again, I said that RuneScape has lots of skills. Construction was the one we just talked about. Wood cutting is another one. You can use it to fletch and make bows and arrows, things in that nature, make campfires.
Sure.
And the graphic symbol for woodcutting had one red pixel in it in the bottom left-hand corner, and it just bugged the entire community. And so they just kept petitioning, and one day they did a patch to remove the red pixel from the game.
I love that.
So probably one of the best patches they've ever done.
That's a great way to use it.
Yes, and I think we could talk about RuneScape forever, but do you have any examples?
I do. We were talking about League of Legends. Oh, send it. You had an extra sheet to send. Dang, I gotta patch some more. I'll rip this in half and send that. But we talked about League of Legends, so I wanted to look up some concrete numbers.
Okay, yeah, of course.
So a good one, again, this is subjective. Some people might not have liked it, but a lot of people in the community really liked it on May 23rd, 2012, and then November 12th, 2014, when there were huge graphical overhauls and technical updates to Summoner's Rift, which Summoner's Rift is the map in that game.
Okay, yep.
So it looked very good. I liked it a lot.
100%.
I really loved
remember that
graphical update, and it was really well received by the community.
Yeah, that was kind of around the time I started playing.
Yes.
Yep.
And this one's going to be more subjective, but it was bad for me and a reason why I left the game. So I went to the wiki page and I looked up, okay, how many items don't exist anymore? And I counted
my hand.
You need
A couple more hands.
24 hands. So over 240 items have been deleted or reworked, which was generally changed into a different item or aspect of the game.
Sure.
240.
You had to relearn.
You had to relearn, and that was what it was. And a lot of there are fans that like that. There are fans like me who are burnt out.
Right. Would you consider yourself more of a casual player?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so maybe it did more damage to the casual player that would play maybe once or twice a week.
Sure.
And it was just hard to keep up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's I know people who are super competitive who are on that biz, on those items, on those characters, and like, we need a tweak, we need an update.
Sure.
That character's broken. But me, I'm like, could relearn this new item and this new character every time.
Yep.
So again, this is going to be subjective. I didn't have one off the top of my head that was universally panned by the community, an update, but they're out there, right? So we wanted to just give some examples of patches can be good, patches can be bad. And it's your example of the massacre, Falador.
Very good.
Falador Massacre was actually an example of a good and bad patch.
Yeah.
Right? Using patches. So they updated this patch to help the community, add a new skill, but part of that also broke it. So that was bad.
Correct.
But they were immediately within hours able to do everything they can.
Yep.
And that's a testament to our modern patch system. So, at the bottom of the hour, we got a few minutes here. I just want to reflect a little bit. And what do you think the most interesting part of the episode was to you?
Unequivocally, well, besides the 240 items in League of Legends, didn't know about that. That's insane. Yeah. It would be the additional hardware. I just think that is, being a past engineer, I think that's just a awesome thing that they were able to do during the time without that ability of the internet to just increase and enhance the experience of the gamer. Yeah. I just absolutely love that.
I really found that fascinating. Like the Sonic and Knuckles game, how they were able to update the past two Sonic games and just also like have a reason, like, okay, what Genesis game do I have? I'm gonna plug in Lion King.
Lion King.
Let me see. I did have that.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Let me see. Or like the X-Men game. Let me see what Sonic Blue Ball game I got, right? Like, what mini game? Because you could do that. Yep. So I really thought that was fascinating. And to me, I love the RuneScape stuff you brought to me. Because I used to play it a lot too. Never got as deep as you or our friend Joe did. But that's fascinating. And to me, I could see myself being really irritated with that red pixel.
Yes, yeah.
I gotta say. So I love that. That's a piece of history that I absolutely love.
Perfect.
So that wraps it up, though. We're at the bottom of the episode.
Was that an hour?
That was an hour.
Holy cow.
Blink and it's an hour. That's what I was telling you. Yeah. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I absolutely love this. I hope we can do it again.
I'm hoping we can do it again very soon. So we got to also thank BCTV. Thank you, BCTV, for allowing us to put on this production. Always a treat.
I know, this has been wonderful.
So wonderful of them to allow us to do this. And we said this earlier, but again, if you have any questions or updates, you want to yell at us, I liked that red pixel.
I don't know if you want to open up that can of worms.
Send us an email at shareddiscoveryshow@gmail.com. We'd love to answer that on air. I'd love to get you back on for a RuneScape episode.
Of course.
Teach me all of that. We'll get our friend Joe in here too.
Yeah, I'll bring the pen.
Fantastic. But it's time to sign off. Did you think of a sign off? You're going to think of it in real time.
Hep hep.
That's okay. Wait, I'll give you a second. Okay, I got to do mine. So I want to say thank you for joining us on episode 19 of Shared Discovery. Before we go, and as we go, make sure you be good people, be nice to each other, play some games, and sign us out. Chandler?
Hep hep.
That's your sign off.
That's my sign off.
I love that. Hey.